Okay, welcome to the November 7th meeting of the Underhill Planning Commission. Welcome Boris and our millions of other people tuning in online every 2 weeks. Okay, I have two additions to the agenda. Not sure if anyone else does. One is I passed out a job description sorry I didn't send it earlier, but we just got it today. We will cover this in a second, but it is a job description for an assistant planner. So I'm going to add that to the agenda as the first item. And then the second item is Gordon, regarding the sawmill, texted me like a couple hours ago and said he wanted to come in and asked me if he had to come for public comment or if he could just come and comment in the Sawmills portion of the meeting because it's later. Since I moved the Sawmills portion for other folks, for Heather and Russ in the earlier meeting, and I didn't want to move an agenda item so late, I said, yep, that's absolutely fine. So I guess I'm sort of like reserving a portion of public comment for Gordon until later. It seemed like the fair thing to do. So those are my two comments. Sandy, the only thing you missed is, hi, how are you? We have a job description that we're going to go through for the assistant planner, and I was hoping everyone could take a look at it. So that's the addition to the agenda, and Gordon's coming in later, so we're sort of reserving public comment until later. Okay, anyone? Oh, does anyone else have any additions to the agenda? And no other public comment since no one's here, which takes us to the minutes. Did I remember to send around when Amanda sent me, did I send around both the 10:3 and 10:17 minutes, or did I screw that?
I just saw the 10:17. Yeah. I didn't see 10:3 in there.
Oops. Okay. That's my mistake. Okay, so we'll vote on the 10:17 minutes, and I will send the 10:3 minutes around as soon as I get home, so don't forget. Okay. Did anyone have any comments, questions on the 10:17 minutes? Nope. Sandy?
You got a lot done when I wasn't here. I wonder what that's.
Coincidence?
The event venue, it looks like you approved that nonprofits would also need a permit.
Yep, so if I'm remembering correctly, we wanted to make sure the rules were the same for everyone, and we thought that because of the section where like you have to have more than X per, sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, that's probably not really going to affect any not-for-profits.
It's fine.
So, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Hi, did someone join the meeting? Maybe it's Carolyn. Okay. Well, can I get a motion to approve the 10:17 minutes? Anyone?
So moved.
Thank you, Bart. Is there a second?
Sure.
An enthusiastic yes for Jack. All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. I know Amanda sees the recording, so sorry, Amanda, about the 10:3 minutes. I will fix that. Okay, that takes us to PZA update, which is, I guess, really turned into this planner job description. So I know it's on the fly, but it is only one page. So maybe everyone can take a quick look at this. The background is, the update I was going to give you was, I told you some of this before, they're working with CCRPC to find a zoning person. And they're going to split it into two jobs, basically, two part-time jobs. So they're going to advertise for a part-time job for a planner, which I guess they're calling assistant planner. So this is the job description. So today I got this, which is why you haven't seen it yet. This is the job description. So I was hoping everyone could we'll take 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, read through it. Brad specifically asked if we could think about the time commitment. and if you think there's something we need to add to this, please let me know. And this is an ad, so if you feel like there's something that's too going to turn people off, let me know too, because we actually want to hire somebody. We don't want it to sound like you have to be an expert in, all this stuff. You need to know some and be interested and willing to learn. And so anyway, I'll shut up now.
Are we allowed to ask questions now?
Yeah, open discussion. I mean,
It says requirement 6 to 10 hours a week. Is that, does these meetings, is that included in that?
Sorry, I should have. So let me tell you where that number came from. The 6 is not, because it was per week. Yeah, so Jennifer and I spoke about that. I thought that if you think about it, the meeting's an hour and a half. You have to do some prep for it. So let's say it takes you a couple hours to prep for the meeting, and then you have to do a little follow-up work for the meeting. So let's say that's a couple hours. That gets you to like 6 hours right there, right? So and then then you're supposed to actually be working on the stuff that we're not able to get to, right? Like talking to the town lawyer, incorporating all these comments, familiarizing yourself with all this stuff. So then maybe that's like double. But I mean, I'm curious how everyone else.
Yeah, I think double, I think once it gets going on incorporating the stuff on the plans.
Yeah. Do you feel good about 6 to 10 a week?
Well,
Just
it may be, the amount of stuff that we're actually passing on to get work on.
Yeah.
Is not really that much, but there's a backlog of stuff.
Right. So for a while, it would probably be 6 to 10 and then maybe come down.
Well, if we're asking this person to do GIS work, that'll take some time.
True.
So that's, I guess my question to follow up all this is like, what's the actual budget for this? Like, you know what I mean? Like if you hit 10 hours, do you just shut off for the week as that person and pick up again next week? Or do you finish a task that takes you to 12 hours? You know what I mean?
I think it's the latter, because I don't know that it definitely has a budget, but I didn't ask that question. They just asked me how many hours do you think it would take? If they were doing 40 hours a week, I think we would definitely get some questions. But if it was 10 was 15 for a couple of weeks, I don't think anyone's going to say anything.
That's what I was trying to figure out. If the budget's $50,000 for the year, if this person
I don't know
kind of front loads the time just to get caught up, and then at the end of a year they're pushing 2-3 hours a week. And is that?
I definitely don't think the budget's $50,000.
No,
I know you're using that as an example, but I don't. They were totally fine with 10 hours a week. So I think if you were catching up and it was 15, I think that would be fine. If it was 35, I think Brad would be do they really need to spend that much time on the planning commission? I think that's my guess. But yeah.
It's government work, so.
Yeah. So.
And what's the knowledge of the GIS mapping tools? Is it just familiar with looking at it and not using it anyway?
I think it
must be proficient in working with, it says.
Well,
and have
they
knowledge
change
of
it.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit intentionally vague to see
they're not creating a GIS
Right.
portal, right?
And-
They're just navigating an existing portal, right?
I also think that if someone came in and they were oh yeah, I moved to Underhill 3 months ago and I stay home with my kids and I'm looking for a 10-hour a week job and I was the head of town planning in Springfield, Massachusetts, but I'm not great with GIS, I think they'd be you're hired. Right? Whereas, I know that's ridiculous. But I think if someone was maybe better in GIS and needed to learn some of the other stuff, then maybe they'd want their GIS skills to feel. I think they're being a little intentionally vague.
Okay.
You should know what GIS is and have used it before, but my guess is it's a bit of a sliding scale depending on what else you know.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So.
That pay rate sounds kind of low.
You think so? I'm not familiar.
In this day and
I
age.
didn't want to say anything, but yeah.
No, I do know. Well, it's funny you say that. I do know. I saw an ad the other day, a sign, and it was $20 to work at a bagel place.
I know.
think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that,
All the
Vermont's
pay has
expensive,
gone up.
so do we think the pay rates,
I think if you, I mean, think about it, if somebody just puts 6 hours in for a week, times $20, like $120 a week, like why even get out of bed? That's my thought for that.
Certainly, they aren't gonna have the kind of vested interest
Yeah,
that you might have if you had a half-time position.
yeah, because you don't have benefits, so you're still gonna, I mean, someone like this, I'm assuming is got a spouse or something that is giving them benefits.
they were thinking that this was targeted at, in an ideal world, that they had made the job, I think they were thinking about it the other way, that they've made the job small enough that it would, because they've been having a hard time hiring people, that this would open it up to a lot of people who stay at home for whatever the reason is, who might be interested in very part-time work.
Yeah, it looks like it would appeal to perhaps some senior citizen that has a little time on his hands.
I think they were thinking a stay-at-home person or someone who's retired, or, but they don't want to work 20 hours a week, but they're like, oh, will I work a day and a half or
Yeah.
something? Yeah, I'll do that. That might be wrong, though, I was saying, you might be right. Maybe there's no market for that, and it's people who want more hours.
Well, I guess you could start with it and see
Yeah.
if you get zero interest, then,
Yeah.
you gotta kind of start playing with
Yeah.
something, either the hourly rate or the hours in general, and see where that balance of interest kind of starts to kick in.
Okay,
It seems like 25 to 30 would be a better ballpark,
For pay,
right?
yeah, I think starting at 25 might be better, but
Yeah.
it's just me.
I agree.
I wonder if the select board meeting has started. I really want this ad. I'm tempted for me to run
Their
upstairs for
meeting
30
today.
seconds
Yeah,
and see if, yeah. Discuss amongst yourselves. I'm gonna run upstairs and see if they're sitting there, and if Brad will tell me that that's okay, because I really want this ad.
The teacher's leaving, guys.
Yeah. Jeff, you're not in charge.
Yeah, I'm in charge now.
General Haig here.
You've been waiting for this moment, right?
Now let's see what we can pass and move on. That was a great presentation, Sandy.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I'm trying to miss something.
Really, really good.
Sit there for weeks.
Enjoyed it. I watched it online.
Yeah,
So it was really
I'm
interesting.
glad they taped it and they
Uh-huh.
like took the original slides and kind of, they edited it so that it was
Yeah, so-
maybe better online.
To rewatch it.
Yeah.
It's really amazing what the mapping technology
I know,
can
it's so
can
cool.
provide, yeah.
I love
The
maps.
overlays and all the different areas of interest.
Yeah.
So what the town had here for a handout, was that a larger packet of maps and so on than were at the actual meeting? You know? Because some stopped by and
This is the meeting.
Yeah, it was
Here.
meetings,
Yeah, we just took 3 of the maps
Yeah.
that were in the report because,
Yeah.
it's a long report. Thinking that if they referenced like a certain forest block, at least people could
Right.
orient. That was all, yeah.
Okay, yeah, 25, there's no like town legal reason we can't say 25 to 30, so if that's what people want to recommend, then we should make a motion that we like this and would like them to post it with a range of $25 to $30, and then it goes to the select board and it, they're in charge, but, yeah. Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Any other comments on the job posting? Okay.
Tell me what the process is. Do you know? So
Yeah,
the
this-
select board, our select board is gonna post it?
Yeah, they
not
have to.
CCRPC?
No, because CCRPC is, so they split it into 2 jobs.
Right,
Zoning, like the stuff for the DRB, which they're doing with CCRPC on.
okay.
And I'm just not involved. I know what's happening, but the end of that. And then this, the select board's gonna sign off on it. Hopefully it's $25 to $30 an hour. And then, they're gonna put it out ASAP, so hopefully we can get some.
So right now Amanda is doing part of this job.
So that would come off Amanda. She wouldn't do anything.
Okay.
Well, nothing with it, nothing with this. And that's my understanding. Yeah, because like Amanda posts everything, and like when I need stuff printed, I send it to Amanda, and Amanda coordinates
Yeah.
the minutes, and like she does everything. So my understanding is that will come off Amanda and go to the new person.
Sounds good.
Everything except the minutes. I think they're going to keep using, the transcriptions that Donna does, as long as she's willing to do them. It's like perfect and great. So that would stay where it is. Yeah, I think everything would come up. Okay. Okay. Can anyone want to make a motion that we approve this job posting at $25 to $30 an hour?
Yes.
Jeff, is there a second? Tim, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
You're good, Boris?
Yeah. Sorry, so we did that.
Staring at me so hard on that one.
Okay, that takes us to, we're in, well, we're sort of on time. That takes us to natural resource and mapping / 2025 agenda. So what I mean by this, and Sandy emailed me because it was super vague. Sorry, Sandy. Did anyone go to was anyone able to make it to the natural resources? My job got in the way, but so, awesome. I did watch the recording. This is more of a discussion on just what people's takeaways were on natural resources and mapping. And I know one big thing that everyone wanted to work on was taking that information and using it for a zoning map. So I think that that's something that it sounds like we could get to, maybe even early in the year. So I wanted to just start that discussion and get it on the agenda, and see how people were thinking about it. So what were people's thoughts?
Okay,
David?
take a look at things, see what some of the suggestions might be.
Mm-hmm.
Go from there, I guess.
What were you thinking, Tim?
Well, it seemed to be focused on the end as far as just the wildlife corridors and trying to keep those open through proactive planning, and possibly, incorporate that into zoning somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But it also seemed like it was somewhat vague because there was so much rural area that the wildlife corridors were fairly plentiful,
Mm-hmm.
and weren't necessarily defined corridors per se.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a little bit tricky to interpret
Got it.
how to best understand that and apply it.
Like where to prioritize.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the corridors, it is indefinite, so, I don't know that we can actually sit down and say, well, it's indefinite, so we'll make it this one here and put that on the map or something like that. I don't think we should be doing that. Because it is indefinite. And
What do you mean by indefinite, David?
Well, that was what was presented at the meeting, and because we do have.
Meaning it's not a defined.
Well, the animals are moving around, and we have
Right.
10-acre zoning, 15-acre zoning, and so on. And so they're moving according to how the houses are in the 10 or 15-acre or 5-acre zoning,
Right. Got it.
which is a large parcel, really. So I think the fact that we do have large parcels allows for a vague addressing of these issues and not something that would be specifically on a map. I don't know about us, I just would like to steer away from a specific animal corridor definition sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's on the map, you can't do anything to interfere with what is on the map, basically, from a corridor to a trail to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Once the official map has it that way. So I think we have to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could give guidance about how best people can proceed given that sort of thing though. You know, maybe it isn't restricted, but boy, it'd be great if you kept just a few trees so that they have those, I forget what they call them, but the sort of stepping stones that helped protect them as they're moving from one location to another.
Yeah, kind of an advice, that would be great.
Yeah, or just like an overlay that you can slap on it, and with obviously disclaimers saying that this is, you know, this isn't like gospel, you know, and these overlay boundaries or lines aren't like defined by any specific code. It's just kind of like for your information only, maybe. Is that kind of like what you're saying? So you can at least overlay and say like, oh, this is where that is, generally speaking, and then that kind of gives you a rough like idea.
Yeah, it depends what we're talking about. You know, if it's a road crossing, clearly, you know, we can't do a lot about that.
Right.
But like I said, you know, by having the landowners on both sides kind of aware that that's
That's
a really
kind of
good spot. Yeah.
I think we have some language in the town plan as far as the zoning regulations, just looking at the wildlife, what wildlife corridors. Isn't there some language in our?
There is.
review?
We should probably look at that, and
Right.
make sure we like that language.
Right.
Yeah. The process that our committee had in mind is to, I mean, I read the report and it's so fascinating and all that, but there's sort of a disconnect between that and, okay, what do we do as a town planning commission with that information? And I think I mentioned before that there's a fellow with the state Fish and Wildlife that works with communities to help them kind of digest that. Okay, you heard about all of this stuff. Well, what is really the priority and what's significant and what's just sort of interesting and, you know, do with it as you can. His name is Jens Hilke, and he gave a presentation a few years ago here on what do they call it, Vermont conservation design, you know, sort of trying to leave certain patches of old growth and young early succession for different wildlife. Anyways, he was going to meet with our committee to try to come up with some recommendations that then we could look at, so we don't have to create things from nothing. There's other towns that have done this. Jericho did it, and they have their certain overlay that they developed. Other towns have done different things. So,
what does the Jericho overlay do? It's like, what is the overlay? What's the goal of the overlay? Is it saying like you can't do certain things in this overlay, or you should just think about these things in this overlay, or do you know?
The way that I remember them talking about it is that, you know, say somebody wants to subdivide or build a house, they would then put the overlay on top and say, well, you know, the best place to avoid this might be if you did it here, or, you know, those kind of things. So it's more of a guidance. I don't think they.
It's not really enforceable. It's just like a best practice.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, we could have them come and talk about it.
That'd be great.
There are two different ways you can deal with an overlay. An overlay can be advisory, or it can be part of the official map.
Yeah.
If it's part of the official map, then it is a very strict regulatory aspect.
Right.
I mean, what I was wondering is, I don't even know how to say this. What I was wondering is, like, thinking 20 years down the road, obviously the rural character of Underhill is presumably important to everyone. Like, it's all over our town plan, right? So I was just wondering, like, in 20 years, with housing pressure and stuff, would an overlay like that sort of encourage whoever the folks are looking at this then to, like, not further chop up 10-acre zoning, for example, or something like that, right? Because who knows what pressures people are gonna be
Yeah,
thinking
so
about.
some of it needs to be on the official map with, you know,
It's just worth thinking about. I don't know the answer. I was just wondering if it's,
Well, one
If
thing,
it's,
about, large forest areas, basically, well, clearings are important also.
Yeah.
And a 10-acre parcel provides a clearing, which is not 10 acres, it's maybe an acre or two around the house. So you've got a clearing there, which provides certain natural habitats, basically,
Yeah.
plus the forest around that. So our 10-acre zoning and 15-acre zoning, even 5-acre zoning, is actually a pretty good setup right there for a balanced ecological forest and clearing setup.
mm-hmm. Yep,
it's when we get into the 3-acre.
it gets smaller and smaller.
Yeah, and a lot of our residential area is in, prime habitat or riparian areas or whatever. So,
would the next to do be to see if this gentleman Jens could
yeah,
distill the bigger picture down to like priorities?
Yeah.
For us? Okay.
are you thinking maybe starting that in January? Was that you?
So I think so. So big picture for everyone as part of this. So as the one who has to put together the agenda, I was thinking, so this 24 VSA 4412, not to steal the next agenda item, but it's part of this, like they still haven't updated. If you look online, it says this is gonna be updated with the 23 changes as of November 1st. Nope. That notice is still there. So that was supposed to be the next thing we were working on, right? So I don't know if they're gonna update it in 2 weeks or 3 months or what, right? So from a just pure agenda perspective, Sandy, sorry to belabor, like, so we have Sawmills going on, right? Obviously, but event venues are done. Like most of the stuff is done. So I'm starting to think that we had on our list, Penny stuff is mostly done. So I'm starting to think, what am I going to put on the next agenda? So, and we're trying to hire this assistant planner who would then take this off my plate. But so yes, I think January, right? I'm like. One of the things that we can talk, and this we could bump to the end and talk about it for 5 minutes because Gordon's here and I'm like, no, I know you are a grumpy old vet though, so I don't want to. For the recording, Gordon's sweatshirt says that.
No, I just make that
up. But I do need everyone's help in like, what do we want to work on for, assuming 24 VSA 4412 is like not updated before the next meeting, like what do we want to start to talk about for the last couple meetings in the year, right? Because we're pretty much through everything that we were speaking about. So yes, Sandy, January would be great if that's possible. Yeah. Is the answer to your question. And everyone else maybe in the back of your mind over the next 45 minutes or whatever, and like think about what you want to work on for the rest of the year, because our agenda is getting slightly sparse. So, okay. I mean, I think since Gordon's here and I see Michelle's online.
So
Okay.
we'll have to watch the video.
And I recognize, I'm so sorry, I recognize you from the DRB hearing, I think. That I watched the recording.
I came to one of y'all's meetings.
Oh, that's right.
December,
Yes, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry I missed the last one. Sorry to be late, but happy
No.
to just be sitting in and listening with y'all.
Oh, right on. Not at all.
So what's
can
your
you?
name?
Yeah.
It's David Bingham.
David Bingham, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes. I have to-
64 hours. So.
I have to include it for the minutes or I get questions. Sorry. Yeah, you came a couple meetings ago. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to see y'all. Yeah.
You too.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see any reason not to hop to Sawmills because Gordon's here. As I mentioned in the beginning of the meeting, I reserved the public comment section until Gordon was here, so I didn't have to sit here for an hour or whatever on unrelated stuff. So, and again, just 2 seconds of background is Gordon had reached out to me and said, hey, I wanted to clarify a few things. Of course, it's a public meeting. Do you mind if I come in? Of course not. So, yep. So we'll move the public comment section back till now. Gordon, please.
So just to clear a couple things up, because I did watch the video from the other meeting when Russ and Heather came in. So the whole reason I was down on Joe's is on his property was I had already, like, when we first moved there, asked him if I could hunt on his property. And I was like, I'll trade you for some bush hogging and some tractor work and stuff because, I mean, as a one-man guy with 2 HLA workers, I mean, that guy's swamped on 300 acres of farmland. So I was like, I can do anything, handy to help you out. So we just entered into an agreement and, when windstorms came along and all that, I would cut down trees and things that were blocking his roads or his fields or encroaching his pastures or anything like that he used. So that was the main reason of why I was on his property. And then when I started the whole firewood business and everything, 2.5 years into it, I just, I still kept up with that, but in exchange for the use of his lot where I was, originally on our side of the bridge, I cut 5 cords of firewood for him in exchange for heating his house and for the lot rent. And so once I got bigger, there wasn't enough room across on our side of the bridge to put logs for storage. And there was also the concern of the weight of the log trucks on the bridge. So I didn't want it, with that being our full maintenance for the money that we would have to put up if everything ever failed, for between me and the Sills, not only would it shut both of our families down for crossing the bridge, but we also have Meat Eat Farm that works down there, has amazing crops and vegetables, but they use both sides of the bridge, so that would shut them out. They'd have to go all the way around the river to Irish Settlement Road to cross it up. And then Joe and Ann, they do their farm to table tours through there every Tuesday night. So I mean, it's a loss of revenue for everybody. So that was the biggest thing. Another thing was when we moved across the field, it was perfect access for tractor trailers to get in there because I did have saw logs occasionally that I would cut out of my firewood loads that I would set aside, and then once I had a load together, I'd ship it to Canada and make a little extra money. And as you know, I short hauled logs from his neighbor's property up above his house down his driveway, which is super fun because your driveway is scary. But I would short haul them down there, and that would make it easier because you couldn't get a tractor trailer up to the landing where my logging guys were. So I just make a little bit of money doing that. They'd come in, it was stacked on the side out of the way, and we could do it any time of year because the roads weren't posted because it was right off the paved road. It wasn't on a dirt road, and it was easy access, tractor trailer get in there. It wasn't to tick anybody off or anything like that. The reason we didn't go to apply for a permit from the DRB in the beginning was because of the fact that I had already been doing forestry operations, cutting trees, mowing saplings, bush hogging, maintaining wildlife habitat. All of that is part of a forestry operation under 10 BSA. And what I further learned is only applicable in a court setting, 12 BSA. So there are 2 different statutes that work with forestry, and me not being a lawyer, I figured that out because of all these meetings and hearings and stuff like that. So now I've moved it up to my property, which I have 55 acres, and I'm sure there is some place on that property within that 55 acres that I could put it that nobody can hear it. So, I mean, it is loud. I sit right next to this 50-inch saw blade running at 2,400 RPMs. It is loud. We have used the town's decibel meter. I had my wife, while I was operating it, walk around and measure it at different spots around our property lines. And, within 50 and 100 feet from the machine. And at 100 feet from the machine, I'm only getting 39 decibels. And I honestly would like to take and buy like 3 or 4 of them and set them up all next to each other just to get range of miscalculation, or if they weren't all dialed in the same, just to make sure that everyone is reading the decibel the same. That way it would alleviate and dismiss any room for error or the wrong reading. So I haven't done that yet, but I actually did get served with a notice of violation from Underhill, from the DRB, for cutting my own firewood. I talked with Brad, September 26th. This was before the 1019 meeting that you guys had. And I said, because he had called and asked me, because I did get the permit denied. And he said, hey, what's going on here? And I said, I finished my last 2 cords that I owed customers yesterday, September 25th. I said, from here on out, any cutting or noise from that sawmill would be firewood for my house, my property. And to this day, that's all I've cut. I haven't cut anybody else's property or any else's firewood. And I've been cutting mine. I do have an arch for sugaring now that I'm going to be running some popple and junk softwood and stuff through. But that's all 100% my wood, and that is completely legal for the state of Vermont. Like, if you are cutting wood off your property or for your property, you can do that. And there's no legislation under 24 VSA that can stop you from that. As long as you're following the AMPs for logging, watershed, runoff, forestry, operation, and all that stuff. So, and I still stand to that. Like, since the 26th of October, the only time my truck has gone loaded in and out of my driveway was with seasoned firewood purchased from Andy Naylor in Waterville that I delivered to clients that I couldn't sustain that seasoned firewood cut on my machine this year. So it still brings me clients. I do have an alternate spot set up out of Underhill at this time for next year's cutting for the next couple of years until this wonderful group can get something changed. And I want to say for the record, 100% that I'm not asking you guys to change anything solely for me. I have a lot of friends with, and relatives with property in Cambridge, Jeff, Waterville, Belvedere, all over that I could sell firewood to from being set up on that point. But I mean, who wants to work away from their house if they don't have to? Mm-hmm. So I am, the only reason I came down here in the first meeting to petition this was because if there's lots in another zoning district of Underhill, like Joe's, Joe has, I think, 150 acres in Cambridge and 150 in Underhill. The line goes right through the middle of this whole thing. If it meets all the performance standards of the town zoning regulations, you should be able to use your property however you see fit, as long as it's not a hindrance. And at this point in time, right now, where my processor is on my property, it meets all the performance standards as far as noise, any pollution, vibration, noxious gases. I don't do it outside of the hours of normal business operating hours. I with a toddler that's 3 years old and now a 2-month-old baby, I don't get out of there before like 8 a.m. in the morning. And I like to go home and eat dinner at night with my family. So I stop around 4 or 5 at night, and then we go in and have our dinner together. I promised my wife I wouldn't cut on the weekends, just to spend more time with them and do things for us around our house and stuff. So it's only Monday through Friday. This year I only cut 51 days out of the whole year. And last year I was only 79 days out of the year. So if you get back into zoning regs, the 3.14 nuisance clause, it says for like operations that aren't daily and stuff, you think certain things are allowed, like lawnmowers, weed whackers, etc., that are above the 60 decibel noise limit. There is no set amount of days that are in that nuisance clause that say, okay, you've hit your 80 days for the year or whatever. This is no longer a non-constant thing. You are now more considered a daily thing. You're a nuisance. You need to stop. My neighbor, he mows his lawn, a different part of his lawn, almost every night of the week if it's not raining. And so, that kind of gets old, but it's his lawn and it's his freedom to do that. If he wants to mow his lawn, go for it, But that's the thing, is I'm not looking to go after other people because of the fact that it annoys me. We all have to coexist. We all have to, there is going to be noise around Underhill. I can hear Dennis blowing from my house, and he's, almost, what do you think of that as the crow flies?
I can hear Dennis too.
Yeah, so and Dennis has been there for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And it's all dependent on the way the wind blows.
Yeah.
There are some days I can hear the range down there. I'm sure you can too. If the wind's blowing right, or if it's clear enough or whatever, those 155s are massive out of those cannons up there, and it shakes my house, and it's a very rare occurrence, but you feel it.
Yeah.
I mean, but like my mom and dad said, on 12 Sand Hill Road, they're like up above the range where the mortars come in, and it shakes their windows, and it almost scares them to death to where it is. They thought they were going to blow out of their house, and so I mean, we're lucky we live on the backside of the valley where we don't have that, but at the same time, we are in an agriculture community, and I don't believe that my processor, as long as it meets all of the all the performance standards, I don't believe that it would change the character of the location or the valley at all, because you have Dennis Beloin that cuts right up above. Then you have Jeff Sprout that's at the top of the hill that cuts firewood up there on the left. If you're headed home, that horseshoe that we pull off. I mean, he's been up there for years cutting firewood. There's logging all over Underhill. I mean, I've pulled logs off your driveway. Jamie Richards, I work very closely hand in hand with him, has done a lot over you. I even picked stuff up from Joe's field that came off your property. Some of that's still over on Joe's property. That's the question. It's a very tight community. I do agree with Roy that I think whatever you guys decide to come up with should go generally before the DRB. I don't think it should be set in stone in the planning commission, because I think there are circumstances and properties that it would be different in different areas. A guy that wants to set this up on a 2-acre lot, whatever, as long as he meets the performance standards, great, go for it.
Right.
But
probably impossible in that instance.
absolutely, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
what I just for sake of argument,
yeah.
if you can do that, go for it.
Yeah.
But the thing is as I deliver logs to people, it kind of throws me for a loop because of the way the definition of a sawmill reads right now. If I was to take, the only thing that's saving people in the town is that they're heating their own house. Like if somebody wanted to start with a chainsaw and a small wood splitter to deliver firewood just to make a buck here or there, and it wasn't for their house, that technically, the way the sawmill definition reads, would be a sawmill, because they're producing, it's where logs would be stored that are turned into wood and other wood products, or lumber and other wood products. And so that is the reason I wanted to change is so, one, nobody would have to go through what I'm going again, because it's been a nightmare. And two, because the definition is so vague. Not a lot of people cut like Dennis does anymore, Dennis Beloin, or Jeff. You don't see, like, if, say, Craig Walker, Jeff Sprout, Dennis, and even Dave Davis, and I mean, Westfalls are getting up there in age too. If they were all gone, who's going to supply wood to Underhill? And so when we looked at the demographics, I watched at the demographics of Underhill, 21% of Underhill still burns firewood. That's a lot of people in this town, and that's a lot of cords. Especially most of my deliveries are 2 to 4 cords in the town, just in town Underhill. I go to Cambridge, Jeff, Waterville, Belvedere, and sometimes to Jericho, not a lot. But I mean, if that was all wiped out, like, we need to still be able to sustain ourselves, whether it's me or another guy that gets into it. We need to be able to sustain ourselves to provide for heat, because, the price of the gas and oil does fluctuate. It does get expensive if people can't buy it on time or plan it out throughout the year to, hey, we need to fill our tank now because it's only $3.25 a gallon versus $5.55 a gallon. So that's basically my pitch. I am more than willing to give you guys information on sound testing, on how the processor works, if you need a buffer zone, or how I've parked things around my place. Generally, my log truck is full of logs, and that's 13 feet high. So that's a very good solid wall that would be the west side of my processor towards Dave and Pam's house or Pleasant Valley. And then my wood truck is parked in front of it underneath. So and then there's hemlock all around it. So it's very blocked in, very muffled. I have a very hard time that even with the leaves off now, if you were to come in, it is the colder time of year, sound is sharper. even with the way the sound reverberates off buildings, equipment, trees, and stuff like that, I still would say you could go down all the way to the flat part of our driveway, and if you're getting over 20 decibels, excuse me, I'd be really surprised. But I do plan on doing another sound measurement with the town's decibel reader, because I still have like 2 cords of house wood to cut, and then like 10 or 15 cords for my sugar wood that I want to cut up so I can boil this spring. But it's there's no way that at the property line where it's supposed to be measured, there's no way that it's over 60 decibels, I guarantee you. And then, it's, I think that just for future people that want to get into firewood, because it's not a lucrative business. It's tough to find logs because of the shortness of the season for logging. I mean, you've seen it, Jerry and Jamie. I mean, they hammered it out with Dennis hauling it out of there in that dry spell we've had this fall. Just because of the rest of the summer was just soaking wet, and it was so hard to do anything within the parameters that the state sets on you for guidelines as far as damaging soil and your watershed runoff and all that. It's tough to get in and out of there. So the logging season is short, the firewood season is short, and that's why I'm kind of for whoever gets into it, I want them to be able to have kind of a clearer path. Like, okay, this guy wants to sell firewood. Nope, you're done. You're not in the Route 15 corridor. You're considered a sawmill anywhere else in town. There's not even a possibility for you to start up. I don't think that's fair if a landowner has the feasible place to cut it and process it without violating town performance standards.
I don't know if anyone else has a question. I have one question for you.
Yeah.
I asked the same, can't guarantee I'm getting the wording the same, but I asked the same question to Heather and Russ with the same caveat that I totally understand if you don't want to answer it because I know that's.
No, absolutely. I'm open to anything.
So my question was loosey-goosey, because what we've been talking about since you've watched your recordings, it's not a surprise to you. Are you saying you think it should be entirely a conditional use subject to what's already in there? Or what we've been talking about, and what I asked Heather and Russ is like, on the flip side, like for them, I was saying, like, are you saying it shouldn't be allowed, or are you saying, do you think with the right, like a set of defined standards, do you think it should be allowed? So my question to you is the flip side. Do you think it should be just a conditional use with nothing additional that just goes to the DRB? Or I'm sure you've heard some of our discussions around, like, we talked about like distance or like set hours or like, no, I'm reading off the list here, I might be missing one, no weekends or whatever. Like, I think someone mentioned like a limit of like, I don't remember what the number was, like X cords per year. Like, if we came up with a definition of like firewood processor or something, and then came up with like, whatever, 5 rules, like, is that something you think is meeting kind of what you're talking about, or are you saying more it should be like additional use that just goes to the DRB?
I think
I think we have to define it first, and then after that.
No,
right.
Sorry. Yeah, for sure.
I think number one, I think it needs to be a clear definition of a machine with capabilities of mine.
Right.
Because the sawmill definition is just so big that any wood product is lumped into that. So I think absolutely, if it means that there needs to be conditions set or setbacks from property lines or whatever, I think that if that's what needs to make it happen, I told the DRB in my permit request that, hey, reach out to me, work with me, throw conditions on me Monday through Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon to 2, whatever. I said I'm open to it. I don't slam it out every day like Westalls do. If it helps get it through, I would say, set it back from a property line. Say, it's hard because I do have softwoods that are needled all year long. So I kind of have that natural buffer right where my setup is. And one of the ladies on the DRB board, when I asked her, I was like, do you want me to get professional sound testing done? She's like, no, it's really all in the way the wind blows. And she did have a good point. Like, there could be a 30-mile-an-hour north wind coming straight out and blow it right to my house, and it would be 10 times louder that day than it would with a no breeze or a 5-mile-an-hour wind going from the south away from the house on a different day. I mean, my wife, honestly, when she's inside with the doors closed or even the windows open and stuff, I mean, the way our house is set up, she can barely hear it inside there. And not to get off topic specifically, but I lived in South Dakota for 8 years with a racetrack, a dirt track like Thunder Road, a mile from my house. And when you were right next to the track, there was a bar there that we would frequent. You couldn't even hear the cars going around that lap track. But when I was at my house, it was like they were right in my backyard and I was watching it. It was so weird the way the sound demographics worked in that. And that was like 72,000 people all around that lived all around the city there. And so it's sound travel is, you're going to get it different every day, depending on wind, the way things are parked around my processor. So with the answer to your question, I mean, you could place setbacks. I know there is some provisions that set aside producers of firewood. I think it's 10 VSA 6801 or 6818. Don't quote me. It's towards the end of 10 VSA. I could look it up real quick if you guys wanted to chat about it. I could find it. But there is, they are starting to look at the reduction of Act 250 requirements because of the fact that firewood logging and the forestry industry is kind of held to such specific standards. They are talking about reducing standards and requirements for Act 250 laws and rules and regulations and stuff, just to make it easier to work with loggers, processors, and people like that. As long as the forestry AMPs are still followed and stuff, that bill is in the House or the Senate right now. I do know that. So, and they do talk about it in there. Producers of firewood that are 3,500 cords a year or less. I'm not anywhere near that. I did 200. I think 200 to 210 this year.
So the definition of machinery, so how would that go? For instance, could it be a size of a saw blade? Or
See, that's tough because there are all sorts of different firewood processors. You have your bar saw processors, you have your slasher saw like I have. It's a round circular blade that is very much like a sawmill, but the way my processor cuts is my log comes in like this and it cuts, and I can only cut 24 inches. So the definition of firewood in the state definition, and that's also under 10 VSA, is anything cut less than 48 inches. And I can only cut up to 24 inches. And it's actually really good. It defines firewood very specifically. I wish I'd brought my binder with me. I have my whole Bible and stuff in there.
So you cut how much?
I can cut to length 24 inches. My boiler burns 24 inch, but the standard is 16 inch. But I mean, like I'm saying, there's little tiny processors for your backyard home heating people that want to buy them for like 10 grand. Or, I mean, I spent 55,000 on mine. The ones like Westall's have they're closer to like 225.
16-inch, 24-inch, that's a cross cut.
Yep, it's a cross cut. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it's not perpendicular or it's not parallel with the log. It doesn't make lumber. It cuts and then pulverizes.
Right. So if
it's hard to
say the thickness of the log.
So yeah, the diameter of the log, I can't take anything over 20 inches, 22 inches.
So if we were to define the equipment as in taking logs that are over, say, a certain dimension, that would maybe define what would be a larger operation from a smaller operation.
It would, yep.
So
if you said something like 12-inch log capable machine or 10-inch or something like that, the only thing with that is when you cut smaller wood, especially with my machine, it tends to rip the piece out when it cuts it, just because of the speed of the saw blade, and that becomes a hazard. So things fly. But it's tough because I mean each machine is going to cut differently. Each machine is going to have an in-feed that's different. Some of them have the live decks like mine does, where you stack a cord to 2 cords on the outside and it just comes in on a conveyor and then goes down a feed trough and goes to the blade. Some of them don't. Some of them have a little winch cable that pulls it up into the hind end of it. And so classifying equipment, if you're going to classify something, I would say to put a limit on the amount of cords that are produced per year. If you're over, because I cut, because most of my heat goes up my chimney, I burn 10 to 12 cords a year in my house. It's an astronomical amount and it sucks to stack. But I still burn that many. So, I mean, if you were going to put a set on commercial versus home use, if that's what you're getting at, I would say 15 or 20 cords per year or less for home use. Because, I mean, there are sugar
That's
makers.
something you can't really, it's not really easily measured. You know, I mean, somebody could say, you know, well, I only
Right.
get 15 cords.
Yep, you're right.
Doing 30 cords.
Absolutely. You're right.
So you can't really, that wouldn't fit into regulations.
No.
Well.
You're right on that.
You know, the type of machinery that's being used, that could fit into regulations. If that works out to
The-
something that could
well,
be
so
easily, you know.
There is regulation on the, on like kiln dried, if you get into Westfall size, where they have kilns, they have to monitor and measure and record the moisture content of their wood.
Yeah.
And that's state regulated. So, I mean, you could put in there, you know, reports of how many cords a year you produce or cut. You could throw it in there. I mean, obviously, if you're truthful, it would work great. If some people aren't, then
Yeah,
probably
I
wouldn't work
wouldn't-
so well.
It would not be something I would think would be a good part of regulation.
No, it would be tough. Because, I mean, you could bring log load after log load and say that's the same load that's been sitting there all summer.
We also don't do a ton of, I feel like, well, I say this after Gordon opened by saying he had a violation, but like, I feel like Underhill doesn't, like, we don't do a ton of it. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but just across the board, not just in firewood.
Yep.
I don't feel like we do a ton of enforcement. It's not like we have
Right.
like some town enforcer driving around looking
No.
for violations.
No, it's strictly solely because they have a high dollar lawyer that's literally micromanaging everything that Brad does if he's not on his game. So that's the only reason I believe that it's been violated. Yeah, I mean, it is how everything works. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I had to hire a lawyer to appeal it to the DRB to prove that I'm cutting my own firewood. I mean, it's just the way the process goes. So it's,
I guess I don't know if it's the end of the world, David, if we have rules in our town, in our thing, they're like a little bit like we're relying on the good faith of the person. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's wrong.
Yeah,
well, I mean, if this, what would you be getting at with restricting the size of it? Because you have to think too is, and if you know anything about logging or the logging industry, I mean, you have your saw logs, your veneer, your boltwood, your tie logs, and then there's your low grade firewood, which is what I cut. But your saw logs, most of the prime saw logs are anywhere from 8, 10, 12 inches in diameter. You really don't get a lot of the bigger stuff. Your cream of the crop is really, you know, right around 16 to 18 inch. And so, I mean, a lot of that stuff doesn't get brought to, say, homeowners or firewood processors and stuff. So by putting a size on the diameter of log that goes through the machine, there are a lot of smaller, low-grade, defective logs that I grab for firewood, but at the same time, a lot of the bigger stuff, it's either, you know, semi-partially rotted at that point, or it's not 4 clear faces on the side or 3 clear faces or whatever. And you get into a lot of different categories and stuff by putting a size restriction on it. Not that I'm arguing against it, I'm just saying for caveat, you know, to say that hey, if we put a log size restriction on it, then we're not gonna be able to get a whole ton of it, you know? And
Is some of the stuff, Gordon, though, like, this might be a bad analogy, but I'm wondering, like, you know, I'm thinking about generators, like, sometimes, like, the cheap, small generator is, like, way louder than, like, you know, you'll see these Caterpillar generators on Sawmills, and they're, like, way quieter
Yeah.
than, like, a $500 generator that you can buy at the hardware store, because it's, like, so much more sophisticated, right?
my 14K generator that I run for my house is 10 times louder than the Cat genset that Griswold's used to run to power the rock crushing plant down in the pit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable how much more muffled certain things are because of their size. I mean,
Yeah.
so, I mean, if you were, so in that sense, if you were going to say, hey, you can only run generators that burn less than 2,000 gallons of fuel per year, compared to, you can only run generators that are 1,400 watts or kilowatts or whatever. I'm not an electrician. But anyway, when you get on that portion of it, I mean, he's got a good point. Like, you could be quieter with a larger generator producing more power than you could a homeowner generator. But at that point, the way the zoning works, the quieter or the homeowner generator is the only one that's allowed because of the size.
Yeah, so is there much difference in noise between the machine, like the machine that you have and the machine Westall has, or like the different?
No, they're
different equipment, they
identical
kinda cut
almost.
the same, they make
Yep.
the same-
My machine, his is faster. He can produce more cords an hour, but I can do 4. I think they can do 7 to 8 cords an hour.
So pretty much all the equipment's similar as far as.
It is. His has the slasher saw. I think it's like a 52 or 54 inch big circular saw that just comes down, and mine has a chain feed, and his has a grapple feed. It has a live deck. His has a tumbler. His setup is actually a little bit louder than mine because he has a tumbler that knocks all the bark and the dust and all that off of his firewood. I don't have a tumbler. I have a split in my belt where a lot of the chaff, bark, sawdust, and all that stuff goes. But it's, I would honestly, I'd love to go down and measure their decibels, because the fact that they're not on the Route 15 corridor and they have a conditional use permit in place for that. And so it makes me wonder, I mean, they've been there for years, and I've even talked to Brad, like, how did they get a conditional use permit for that, even though they're grandfathered, and even though they're not in the Route 15 corridor? I mean, it had to be before any zoning was applied. But then again, why would you even get a conditional use permit if there was no zoning? So, but there is a permit. And so that's what kind of, like, I'm not mad about it anyway, because I have an alternate spot to take it to. But if there is another firewood processing operation happening that is the same equipment that mine is, in a place in Underhill that's not on the Route 15 corridor, the same opportunities should be applied residence wide,
Right.
if you can meet the performance standards. Because I honestly, I mean, if the sawmill regulation was not in there, I believe that my DRB permit would have been passed. I think that's the only thing that stopped him was that, because Greg Walker gets logs hauled in. He has a bar saw, like my first processor. It's just like a chainsaw, does the same thing. It is quieter. But Westall's, they have the slasher saw like mine. I don't know what Dave Davis has. I think his is a bar saw as well, not a circular saw. But there are sawmills, firewood processors in Underhill that are operating grandfathered, doing the same thing that I do every day. That are doing. I mean, they literally cut and pulverize the wood and do the same exact thing, and they're allowed. And so that's, like, I'm not bitter about it. Like I said, I could care less. I could shut the thing down tomorrow, sell it, and make a ton of money off the equipment, and just sit there and pick the belly button lid off on the couch. But the thing is, I've got history with this town. I love Underhill. I've lived here since '93. It's a great place to live, and the thing that I get the most out of is seeing the smile on the face when you pull up the yard, they're like, oh shit, yeah, my firewood's here, and they get excited and they go out and stack it, and it's a service to the community. It's not I between last year and September when I bought the log truck, just the log truck, to this year, I've spent about $42,000 in maintenance on the thing. I hate that log truck. If it wasn't insurance fraud, I'd set it on fire. But
This is being recorded. Right?
absolutely, that's why I'm getting it out. That's why I'm getting it out. Jay Clark's my insurance agent. No, but I hate the thing. It's a love-hate relationship, but it does make me money. It does help. It's a service provided to residents in and around Underhill, and I mean, honestly, I love it because I work for myself. If something fails, I'm the only one to blame, and I help people out. I mean, I've hauled wood off your property. I've hauled wood down your driveway. I delivered wood to Tavit over there. I work with the community, and it's a great service to provide. And I would hate to see it shut down just because somebody doesn't want to hear it, even if it is in limits of the performance standards of Underhill. So that's my request is just, throw it out to the DRB, make it so that, me or any other guy that would love to start up in an entrepreneurial process of starting their own business in firewood, make it so it's not just, nope, you're not in the Route 15 corridor, you need to be shut down. Give somebody an opportunity to serve Underhill like I have, and like I continue to do. Make it meet requirements. If there's a setback from property line, shoot it out to the DRB. They're going to go up and do a site visit like they did at my house and be like, well, Johnny's window is 13 feet from the back of that saw blade. Do you think he's going to like that when he's sleeping? And, so I mean, that's what I told him, give me requirements, I honestly, it would be tough to set, setbacks from property lines because of the way the wind travels. One day you could get 30 decibels, one day you could get 60. I don't like to cut the wind because the sawdust most of the time always follows me. It goes right down to the back of my shirt and I hate it. So I usually cut on calm, nice clear days. It's, I don't know, I mean, it's hard to put, I think the performance standards pretty much define a good starting point. If you wanted to put days of operation, Monday through Friday, 7 or 8 a.m. to 4 or 5 p.m., I think that's more than fair because, there are a lot of remote workers these days. I do agree with that. There are a lot of stay-at-home moms. My wife is one. But it doesn't bother her because it keeps me out of the house and it makes us money. So I say, I guess when I was talking to Brad about this whole thing, way back in the day when it first started getting complained about, I said, well, what are the hours of operation for Underhill? He said, well, technically there really are none. He said, there's nothing set in stone. You cannot make noise between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. or whatever. Right. So I mean, not that I'd be crazy enough to do that. I'd like my sleep just as much as the next guy, but make it comfortable for your neighbors. 8 to 5, 8 to 4, 8 to 3, whatever. It's you can make it so open to regulation. I'm not opposed or for anything. I just want the chance to say, hey, okay, this isn't a sawmill. We messed up, because you can hear it at your house, and I'm sure Brian, can you hear it up at your house across there?
Not at all. No. Never.
Even when I was set up in Joe's Field down there?
Never. I don't know if it's because of I'm a buyer.
There's a lot of pine trees right there. So.
To your point about sounds weird how it travels.
It is.
Yeah, I've never heard anything.
Okay. Yeah, and that's weird. It's not weird, but it makes me curious as to how the sound travels. There is a huge bank against the back of my house with a bunch of pine trees and stuff, so it's not obviously going to jump up and over your place. But with me being directly across from your place, like right now with all the leaves off, I can see your roof and everything perfect.
Yeah,
so I was waving the other day, you didn't wave that.
I did. Sorry.
But no, the way sound travels, I would be surprised that you could not hear it at your house because you are elevated pretty well. So,
yeah. No, I can't hear it.
But yeah, so given that fact, it's weird that they're hearing it down below the tree line at their house still, and you're directly across with no leaves and not hearing it now. So you would definitely hear it because you're closer, even though there's a ton of hemlocks right between us.
I haven't heard anything recently.
No, I haven't cut in probably 2 weeks. I've been busy stacking, So, but But no, I'll be doing Sugarwood here in a couple of days. Just waiting for nice weather, probably next week. But no, I'm going to be doing another sound reading, and I want to. Yeah, that's why I brought this to the attention of the Planning Commission and to the DRB. Like I want to be within the regulation at the same time, but I still want to have the opportunity. So it's I don't want the bylaws of Underhill to not adjust with the demographics of industry and the people, because I mean a lot of people now they don't like to go out and cut their own firewood that have moved to Underhill. They just want to call a number, say, hey, bring me a cord of dry wood or bring me a cord of green wood for next year, and then the truck shows up, dumps it and all that, and it's stacked. Just like the demographics of the way firewood processing is changing. Like I said, it's not going to be long before you don't see anybody out there with a chainsaw and a splitting wedge or a splitter on wheels, splitting their own firewood. It's a rare sight these days. So with that being said, in order to provide firewood for the town of Underhill, Jericho, Cambridge, Jeff, whatever, if you're a firewood processing person or have that business, you have to be able to keep up with 3, 4, 5, 6,000, 1,200 cords of firewood a year for the amount of calls you get. So it's tough to put a limit on that too. Like if you were going to, come into like size of log, amount of cords per year, because if everybody goes and shuts down for firewood production, then, what do we have left? I mean, you have propane heat and propane gas and propane electricity and coal, solar, heat pumps. Then what do you do if the power goes out? I'll still be warm. So,
on that note, does anyone have any other questions for Gordon?
I talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, that's
I'm very passionate about it.
You said you're gonna do Sugarwood next week.
Yep.
I would very much like to come over and,
Absolutely.
so I can,
You know where I live.
more or less.
Okay. Where the log pile in Joe Tisbert's field is now.
Yeah.
There's the house for sale right across from it. That's Jim and Becky Johnston's. That's 621. The driveway right next to theirs, it looks like a farm access. You go in that and go across the bridge, and you go all the way up the long driveway. Dave Sills' house is on the right. You can see that from the road. Mine's all the way at the top. I can give you my number. You have my card, don't you? For log trucking? Did I give you a card? Or did you get it from Jamie?
No, I didn't.
I'll write down my number for you.
You may have given me a card, but I don't think.
I'll write my number down and get in touch with you just so you can see it and kind of get a feel for what the operation, the setup is and all that. And if you come pick up eggs, you stop by and see it too. So because I'm not hiding anything. That's why if I was trying to hide stuff and be quiet about it, I never would have put it down next to Pleasant Valley. Like I'm open about stuff. I honestly, at first, it was a firewood or a forestry operation for me and everything that I could find, and now it's a commercial firewood operation. So that's why I want to meet the bylaws of Underhill. I want to meet the regulations. Like I don't want to get these nasty calls or emails or phone calls or whatever from the town or lawyers or anything like that. But at the same caveat, if you have 300 acres, you should be able to do with it as you want, as long as you meet the performance standards of Underhill. That's my only argument. And there are no hidden attachments or me not planning correctly or anything like that. It's just my basic thought, plain and simple. Any other questions? I know I talked a lot about it.
No, it's an open, public meeting for everyone. So thank you for coming in, Gordon. Anything else?
I mean, I just have, I guess, maybe a couple comments. So I think like for you personally with moving forward with the rest of your year, I think whatever you're doing for your personal use, I don't know if anybody has much argument against it at this point if it's for your own personal use.
Right.
I mean, regardless of what you're using, right? Like just because you have a very large, expensive saw cutting machine doesn't
Yeah.
mean you can't use it for your
Right.
personal use. Just like if I wanted, I guess, mow my lawn with a top fuel dragster, I could.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just like somebody with a Harley with straight pipes that leaves
Yeah.
for work at 6 a.m. It's loud,
Yep.
like that's their thing. So I guess relative to that, but I think for my opinion, for us as a town, with the zoning regs, I think we do need to clearly define it and just say like, you know, a firewood processing, you know, operation is this with the use of said tools that are designated for that specific
Yep.
thing. And then, like I said, pass it on the DRB for conditional use. I'm sure Brad doesn't like that answer, but I think it's very site specific, as Gordon
Yeah.
said, because I've done land development for 22 years as a civil engineer, working with people, trying to build small businesses with land use restrictions and trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, conditional use versus special use versus just not allowed altogether is a very, it's hard to black and white that. It's a very gray subject. So
Right.
I think defining it is great, and then kind of like so maybe giving minimal things to think about to kind of pass on to the DRB so that, you know, because when Brad's no longer involved or the other board members aren't involved, the new members come in, they kind of have to have like a starting point because these things aren't historical to them.
Right.
You know?
I think a big thing to caveat on that is like, we all load our processors if we have a live deck differently. I use my log truck just because I have to truck logs in. It's easy. Craig Walker uses a tractor with forks. West Alls uses a Bobcat with a grapple attachment on the bucket. You know, so if you guys need help with any definitions of equipment,
I don't know if it
things
needs to
like
get that specific. I think you just need to say these things, and then the DRB just needs to, you know, enforce with this if they approve it with those conditions for the performance, like noise, you know, nuisance ordinance. You know, it has to apply to this. It has to apply to state regs for, you know, land use. You know, management operations.
drainage,
decibel levels, whatever. And then if you violate it and somebody complains about it, there's a paper trail to go back to it. If you violate it, nobody cares. I guess there's no harm, no foul at that point. But that's kind of where you get into that point where, like, you know, you kind of rely on the person with the permit to do what they should be doing as a, you know, a considerate neighbor. So.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And, you know, that's why I'm, you know, reaching out to get to that point. So,
Were you gonna say something?
Oh yeah, sorry, if I could too, I was wondering, I know, or David was trying to get at some kind of maybe metric that, about the equipment that could correlate to the nuisance, and it's hard to find, like, and maybe the output is the best way to put limits, or the hours and the days. Is there anything like the displacement of the motor or something like that? I feel like that wouldn't be, just like you said, sometimes a little generator makes a lot more noise, and maybe that wouldn't work, but.
You could?
Yeah. It seems like the classification of the equipment is the best thing you have to go on, because you know, like you said, the bar saw is quieter, the slasher saw.
Right.
If it's a veneer machine, then that's pretty clearly like a sawmill. To
Right.
my mind. But,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Another thing with the end part of the sawmill definition, it says any portable equipment used in the processing of timber cut on site or anything is exempt from this definition. So, I mean, my machine is portable. I could pack it up in 10 minutes by myself and move it right off the site. You'd never even know it was there other than sawdust and log chips. So there is different size motors that run these. Some of them are gas motors, some of them are diesel motors, some of them are even electric. If you have 3-phase electric, there are a lot of guys that run that. And the only thing that cuts on the noise pollution on that is the sound of the diesel motor, which honestly is quieter than my slasher saw. The thing that they're really getting the most noise off is the ring of the saw blade going through the wood, and then the smash of the block going through the splitting wedge. The motor it's a 74 horse Deutz motor that's muffled and baffled, and it's very quiet.
I've seen and heard like the
slasher stuff, the ring of it.
I've heard that. No.
You can hear West Alls. If you drive by theirs with the window down, you can clearly hear it right out of the road.
But it's kind of a quick noise. I mean, because it's such a fast operation.
It is.
It's just like, I
you
mean,
do not
it's
Yeah.
less than a chainsaw going for
Right.
5 minutes for one cut, you know?
Right. No, I can do a cord of wood with perfect wood that's straight that I don't have to get off and turn and stuff. I can do a cord of wood in about 18 minutes.
Reminds me like a router.
It is.
It's like,
Yep.
It's just like
It's
a loud-
absolutely like a router. It's that type of
Yeah.
noise.
I mean, it's an annoying noise, but
It is. It is. Yeah.
But it's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I could hear it,
Can
where
you?
I live now.
Yep.
But, I think, I was here when you came the first time too, and
Yep.
there was a conversation about the rural character and wanting to preserve that in Underhill. I think that's really important, but,
Yep.
I consider that a business that matches the rural character, just like
Right.
when Butler across the road is unloading with heavy equipment, it's
Yep.
loud for a while, but.
Yeah, they've milked there for however many
Yeah,
generations.
Or Joe's running tractors, it's like, it's part of it. So I hopefully you guys will come to the kind of definition that you're describing so that these kind of things can go forth, and maybe you kept talking about the number of days. I think that's a good one to say. If you're outside of the Route 15 corridor, 100 days max or something.
Right.
Like that.
Yep.
So
And to generalize that, I mean, last year I did 79 days and I did 265 cords. So the year before that I did 325 cords, and I think, and I was even down for a month that year. But I also cut longer in the season. I think I cut till December because it was warmer that year. So, I mean, you could also put, because I only cut in the summer. Spring, summer. I started April 15th this year, and I ended September 26th for people's. So you could do days of operation during the summer, if that was something, because it's so hard on my equipment during the wintertime. Anything below 30 degrees, it starts hard. The hydraulic oil takes forever to warm up. There's more pressure because the fluid consistency is thicker. It's just a lot more wear and tear on the machine. And honestly, I fixed enough on it this summer when it's warm out. I don't need to keep doing it through the winter because then it really sucks to work on because you're cold and it's cold and it's just not feasible for me. So you could do days of operation, months of operation, April to October, April to November, if that was something that, needed to come into play. And again, I'm not trying to tailor it towards me. That's just what I have done in the last 4 years of doing this.
It sounds to me like, the real objectionable characteristic is noise, basically.
Yep.
And so, we have a nuisance ordinance that defines noise.
Mhm.
I don't know that anything else is really going to be an effective kind of limitation or
Right.
restriction.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's tough, and that's why, when we were talking about this whole thing, especially with Title 10 and Title 12 for the Vermont statutes, that was a really hard one to get around too, because they're completely different. Title 10 is very short and very vague, kind of like the sawmill definition in the town statutes, where Title 12, it goes through so many different things, and it was brought out in 2018 versus Title 10, which was brought out, I don't even remember when. But I do know I have talked with some lobbyists and stuff that are working in the House and the Senate that are trying to get those two statutes to match up so there's only one definition. Because if it was Title 12, it'd be completely protected and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. But since it's Title 10, it's so much more vague, and it says the timber harvest, the processing must be done where the timber harvest occurs. You can't truck logs in. I can clear cut my whole property all down to the bone and cut every single log off that, and that is an active timber harvest. So I could cut all of that legally and I wouldn't need a permit at all. The minute I truck one log in from Joe's property to my house, that's a commercial sawmill, according to the town statutes and the way the regs read in Vermont statutes. So that's what got me, is the sawmill. So, and that's what they classify it as. So,
Obviously the noise was the number one issue, right?
yeah, the noise was, and I didn't take a decibel reading down on the field of Joe's. I wish I would have now when I was set up down there, but I never did. I just packed up and moved up to my property.
Yeah, I guess my point is, if it was in a different location, it may not have ever been an issue. I think
Right.
it's brought up.
No, it was definitely brought up. So it was repeatedly brought
Yeah,
up.
if it was like on the other end of his field or.
If it was on the other end of his field, it would have been Cambridge.
Right,
Well, there's nothing, then it wouldn't matter.
right.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think you just would,
I think it was,
nobody would complain in the first place.
It's like 178 feet that it wouldn't have mattered. Because of the way the line goes. It
Yeah.
goes right up near your house.
Oh, yeah, it comes through, yeah, it comes right by my driveway.
But now it's kind of brought the whole thing to a head, it forces you to.
Oh, it does.
To make the rules.
That's a
clear,
real-
right?
It's a
Not
real
one-to-one,
chaps your
example.
chaps your cheeks knowing you're that close to the county line where it's legal there and it's not here.
So there's noise, but there's also incessant noise.
Right.
Two different things, not, I mean, occasional noise is one thing, incessant noise can be annoying.
Mhm.
If something's going on for 3 hours, incessantly, a lower level noise would be, much more annoying than, an occasional
Mhm.
noise that's quite a bit louder, actually.
Yep. So I never.
That may be a part of a characteristic to think about also.
Yep. So with my time period, it takes me an hour and 10 minutes to cut 3 cords into my truck.
Yeah.
So it's an hour and 10 minutes in the morning, and then an hour and 10 minutes in the afternoon well, if you're standing right beside it, of operation time over 60 decibels. If you're 100 feet away, it's according to the town decibel meter, it's 39 decibels. So I mean, and like I said, I'd like to get 3 or 4 of them, set them all on the same, like a pod or a stand or something like that, and dial them all in, and then cut and make sure every one of them is reading the same thing, and then say, okay, this position 100 feet away in any range of wherever this processor or any industrial equipment is. This is what we're reading with 3, 4, 5 decibel meters, and this is what we have for noise. So for the sake of, you only had 1 decibel meter that was not correctly calibrated. I mean, if you had 4 or 5 of them, they're all reading the same thing, then obviously they're within a decibel or 2. You could have a pretty good idea that they were working. So.
I'm sure if you cut and dice noise in different ways.
Oh, yeah.
It could be, incessant noise. It could be just occasional loud noise. Then there might be something that is intermittent noise that is
Well, there's high frequency, low frequency.
Horrible shrieking noise.
It's just like there's so many.
the type of noise.
Well, yeah, I
Maybe,
mean,
I don't know. Maybe get off into an infinite number of.
just living next to Joe, I mean, you live there too. The baling machine for the hay is completely different from his potato machine or his discs for tilling in the dirt and the soil, which is completely different than his tractor just driving along. I mean, there's 25, 30 different implements that he runs on that farm, and I can hear almost all of them up at my house because the noise travels right up the hill.
Sure.
When Shane is down there working in his field, I can literally hear his conversation perfectly, like he's standing right next to me. And I was like, boy, you ever talk about me, I'll know it.
Did you tell him that?
Oh, I did. I made sure. I said, I'm always eavesdropping. So unless you hear my processor, I can hear you. But yeah.
Some of the duration too, because like you said, like the lawnmowers down there are actually louder than your sawmill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the thing, is it's weird because you've driven up my driveway where Shane's field is to the top of my house. I can hear him clear as a bell, especially when I'm deer hunting in the fall and he's like cleaning stuff up. If he's talking to his employees, it's over 700 or 800 feet, and just talking like this, I can hear him clear.
So there's something about the topography right there.
It's weird. And so that's why I say, like, it's hard to classify noise and how it travels, because there's the different scenarios. I mean, people are going to have their house blocking it, or a barn, or a shed, or a bluff or something like that, where he can't even hear my machine at his house, but he can, kind of almost the same distance. You're a little farther away, but. So.
Okay, sorry. Jeff has subtly reminded me of 7:30.
Sorry.
Does anyone have anything else? Okay, so here's my proposal, because we didn't get to the. So for next meeting, I think we should do 2 things. Let's talk about. We have a lot of stuff to talk about on Sawmills. I think lots of different ideas of distance, whatever. Everyone heard of.
Yeah.
So I think we should talk about that. And I also think we should talk about our agenda coming up, like I mentioned before, Gordon, before we started speaking with Gordon. So if everyone could please think about that for next meeting, we need to think about our first meeting in December in 2025, like what we want to have on our to-do list, please.
Any suggestions for the to-do list?
I mean, that's for you. You're supposed to come up with stuff for next meeting. You have to just repeat back what I tell you right now. And no, I don't have any either. So, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
David, second. Mark, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.